I am Bob Alman.
Okay.
Thank you for that gracious introduction. And as the featured reader, this is my third and final appearance because
Oh, why is it final?
because my text today is exceeding the bounds of poetry. So how much further can you go then beyond the bounds of poetry? So I'd like to ask yourself, what makes you a poet? Nothing, except your own declaration, I am a poet. And this thing I'm saying now is a poem. You don't need a license, you don't need a permit. There's nothing to buy, nothing to join. You might join the Poets of the Palm Beaches, but that's not required. You might even take a course from John Pelosi if you enjoy being a student. Good luck with that. It's a little like being an itinerant preacher in my native backwoods, Mississippi. You are self-anointed and you preach the word. Therefore, you are a preacher on your own word alone, and you can quote God freely. My mother asked me about 10 years ago, because she knew I was a writer, why do you write poetry, son? Because I had admitted there wasn't any money in it. I tried to explain it to her, but the truth is you owe no one, not even your mother, any explanation of why you write poetry. Part of the pleasure of poetry has been for me discovering and exploring the bounds of the art, and that's the theme of my sermon today, the bounds of poetry. I say this, and therefore, it struck me as a revelation, so I had to write a poem about it. And naturally, the poem is called 10 Rules for a School of Poetry, inspired by a film school of the 90s known as Dogma 95. This is how they describe their process. The film must be done on location, no props may be added, sound must never be produced apart from the images, and music is never used unless it occurs in the scene, as from a radio. The camera is always handheld, the film is always in color, special lighting is not permitted, nor is superficial action. The action must take place here and now, no flashbacks, no genres, no widescreen. The director is not credited. Those are the published rules of the film school, Dogma 95. Therefore, my 10 rules for a new school of poetry are as follows. Are you listening, Blake?
Yes.
So, the poem is a poem. This is the first rule.
He hasn't read it yet. He's read something else.
Quiet, please.
Sorry, but Patricia interrupted me. Sorry.
The poem, number one, the poem, throw that man out.
Yes.
The poem is a poem by virtue of the declaration of the poet that it is, in fact, a poem. No other authority is required or sought. That includes Diana Loy.
That's not me, that's Dennis.
So, and there's an asterisk by that, and below at the end it said, the author declares this work to be a poem. The poem, number two, the poem should be created whole in one sitting or standing or walking. No alteration of any kind is allowed under any circumstances at any time subsequent to the spontaneous creation of the poem. Critics may comment on the poem, but their critiques may affect no alteration in its form or content. Number five, no patterns of rhythm or rhyme are permitted beyond those randomly occurring in ambient, mundane speech. Number six, no logical or epistemological structure should be visible or deducible as this would indicate that the poem was prefabricated or planned. No organizing principle should be discernible, no intentional beginning, middle, or end, because that would suggest meaning, direction, or purpose. No conceptual payoff should by any means reveal itself, as the reader would thus be denied the opportunity to create significance or not. Number 8, no form of publication or distribution is permitted, as this broader currency would compromise the spontaneous integrity of the work. Number 10, public reading by the poet or someone else is permitted, but strongly discouraged. So, in the spirit of these new rules for a school of poetry...
Blake Fallon shouting from her seat, "That's my poem! You've stolen my poem!"
Blake Fallon.
You are not Blake Valen. That's Blake Valen right there.
Are you confused?
Yes, I am. I am. Who said that?
I wrote that poem many years ago. Myself.
Oh, you did that precise poem?
That poem precisely. You plagiarized everything about it, even including the title, 10 Rules for a School of Poetry. How dare you?
Well, that doesn't make sense. I remember distinctly going to a lot of the films of the Dogma 95 school and then realizing that the rules of poetry were just as arbitrary and figuring out a simple way to make that clear.
So you chose the simple route of just stealing my poem. Here, Patricia.
Just a minute.
Oh, yes.
I've known Bob a long time, ever since he's been a member here.
Oh, you are lucky.
He is a good writer and a decent poet, and he would never plagiarize, and he doesn't need to plagiarize anyone's poem.
Bravo, bravo, thank you.
For one person.
Sit down, Blake. Knee Ray. So, now, well, that was well done, both of you, even though you dreadfully overacted. So, now, for those of you who weren't around at the time, didn't recognize that situation, how many of you remember this happening? A few, yes, a few. This actually happened over at the shuffleboard court, and this was a reenactment, a sloppy reenactment, but a reenactment. Quiet. I'm speaking. I'm the featured reader.
You shouldn't speak to the great Blake Fallon that way.
That is Blake Valen. You're
That's
talking.
Blake Fallon.
Well, you're in your own reality.
I'm Blake Fallon.
Oh, Jesus. Get the net, somebody. Take this guy away. Anyway, that was because I was already designing and producing situations when this happened at the shuffleboard court. When this actually happened, some people in the audience suspected that it was a staged event, like the one we just did, which I called a situation, but it wasn't. I had already performed situations, including Tennessee, with a cohort of 6 black-clad situationists in the mausoleum in Boca Raton. I wore white. The 6 friends distributed themselves and agreed to perform on cue from their positions in the audience. The cue was simple. Every time I said Tennessee, the situationist scattered in the audience would repeat it twice, Tennessee, Tennessee. So I will now invite you to choose your part to play one of the 2 audience roles. The segment of the audience who has no idea what's happening until people around you begin chanting unexpectedly, or the part of the audience who has agreed beforehand to act in this provocative role from the audience. Take your pick. Do either, neither, or both. The poem Tennessee is an ekphrasis, and I worked on it a lot. It came out very differently from the way I expected it would, which to me is always a good sign. Anyway, it's a poem that pays tribute to Tennessee Williams.
Tennessee.
They're driving me crazy. Is there anything I can do about them?
I don't know what's going on.
I have no idea what's going on, I assure you.
I'm confused.
That's pretty clear. So,
Tennessee.
and in this point, Tennessee,
Tennessee. I'm
the
confused.
the boundary between the performer and the audience is deliberately blurred. So,
Blurred. Mississippi.
is there anything we can control this group? Call the gendarmes.
North Dakota.
All right, this is the point, Tennessee.
Tennessee. I'm confused.
I sing the song you sang yourself to change yourself from Tom to Tennessee. Drawing the characters out of your mind from part to part and play to play and all a part of Tennessee. Washed up on the shores of a last resort with nothing to do with each other, no one to be but yourselves. You have only to speak your scripted lines and play the part that only you can play. Ah, Tennessee. Your wild iguana spirit will not be bound for long. Maxine and her cabana boys with dancing castanet will set you free to roam the beach and teach the natives how to treat a playwright. I'm going to abbreviate this. The end is, I sing the song you sang yourself to change yourself from Tom to Tennessee. Fleshing the characters out of your mind from part to part and play to play, and all a part of Tennessee. Tennessee! Tennessee! Well done, well done. That was the poem, I think, that gave me the idea of creating the situation as something that goes beyond the bounds of poetry, that merges the boundary between poetry and theater and sport and spirituality and all the rest of the stuff. It's really a totally involving sacrament of human beingness.
Beingness.
What?
Involving,
Involving,
yes.
yes. It's
Revolving.
pretty overwhelming from up here, actually. So, it's a totally involving sacrament of human beings when after the initial shock, an entirely new world is glimpsed. It's kind of like when you turn a corner and think you know where you are, and you have no idea where you are, and you're desperate and confused, and you have to create a new order in your mental grid. So I think that's... Did you find that funny?
One more minute.
What?
One more minute.
Okay. Now, thank you for the time cue. But, what can I do with these people?
Yes, I know.
You've been asking yourself that for some time. So, imagine now driving along, when you take this even further, driving on the I-95, coming to a cloverleaf and seeing 12 white-clad figures playing a game out there, an oversized game with soccer balls and with giant wickets, and you say, what is this? You're in an alternate reality. And that's a situation that I've only done a dress rehearsal for in Palm Beach, right in front of Testa's, on the Broad Mall. Nobody said anything to me, but we were prepared for anything to happen. The situation, you declare a beginning after all the preparation, and then after that point, which is roughly the point at which people would notice something strange is happening, you say the situation has begun. That's the next situation that I want to do, and who knows, you might be invited to perform in it in one role or another. Thank you. And thank you for the time cue.